Good evening, everyone. Annyeonghasimnika. Welcome to the special webinar K-Move, Developing Your Career with Mentorship, co-hosted by the Korea Society and KOTRA, the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency. My name is Tom Byrne, and I'm the President and CEO of the Korea Society. The Korea Society is a private, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated solely to the promotion of awareness, understanding, and cooperation between the people of Korea and America. Since March, the Korea Society has stepped up its activities for an online audience, although we are looking forward to when we can resume normal activity in our attractive office at 350 Madison Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. Today, we are excited to present our second informative webinar in a series of 3 programs in partnership with KOTRA. For those of you who are interested in the first program held back in July, Building Your Brand on YouTube, please check out our YouTube content at koreasociety.org. Today, we have invited an experienced group of mentors who have successfully built their professions in the United States. They will provide valuable information and advice on the employment process, strategies, and how they settled into the U.S. market. Tonight's program will be composed of 2 parts. First, Soon-Kyu Shin will share his story about his professional successes at Brown Brothers Harriman, BBH, and as a writer, overcoming the challenges of being blind. This will be followed by a panel discussion with 2 successful Korean-American mentors, Esther An, Head of User Experience for YouTube TV, and Yejin Kim, Senior Vice President, Global Creative at IT Cosmetics. The discussion will be moderated by William Jun, attorney at Eisenberg and Baum's Law Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing. Before we get started, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to KOTRA, our partner in putting together this program. I hope all of you enjoyed tonight's program. Now, I would like to turn the screen over to Mr. Lee Ji-hyung, President of KOTRA North America. President Lee will speak for the organization following my remarks.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome and thank you all for attending this event. My name is Ji-hyung Lee, President of KOTRA North America Head Office. KOTRA is a South Korean government agency serving small to medium-sized businesses and startups looking to tap into the global market. We strive to promote international trade and investment in 84 countries. I'm in charge of KOTRA's 9 North American offices, with our headquarters situated here in New York. KOTRA New York K-Move Center provides institutional support for both companies looking for young professionals and qualified Korean job seekers through annual job fairs, workshops, and webinar events. The recent pandemic, with its enormous impact on the global economy, has resulted in a desperate situation for the U.S. job market. More discouraged workers are now generated, including Korean students, in despair, intensifying hardships on recruiting companies. KOTRA and the Korea Society has put together today's webinar to provide measures on how to overcome these challenges in this unprecedented time. The group of professional mentors invited will share the wisdom they have learned through experience with practical advice for you all. We certainly hope today's program encouraged us to overcome the hard times and inspire current job seekers to successfully build their careers in desiring fields. KOTRA would like to thank our distinguished speakers in sharing their insights with us today. We would also like to express our deep appreciation to the Korea Society in collaborating with us again after our previous event in June. I now turn it over to William Jun, the moderator for today's webinar. Mr. Jun is an attorney at Eisenberg and Baum's Law Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. He represents clients in anti-discrimination cases. Previously, he also worked for Minkwon Center, a nonprofit organization serving low-income immigrants, and Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights. Please welcome William, and once again, Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoy the program.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar. My name is William Jun. I'll be moderating the session 1 and 2 of today's webinar. It's a great pleasure to participate in this program hosted by the Korea Society and KOTRA. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. The session 1 will be the keynote speaking. Session 1 will be the keynote speaker with keynote speaker Seung-Gyu Shin. Mr. Shin is a fixed income research analyst for Brown Brothers Harriman, where he is responsible for evaluating investment opportunities in the healthcare and consumer products sectors. Mr. Shin's professional investing career began in 1994 as an analyst for JP Morgan. Mr. Shin received his AB degree from Harvard and was a PhD candidate at MIT. Mr. Shin also serves as the board chair of Yana You're Not Alone Ministry, a nonprofit organization committed to helping orphaned and abandoned children. He also published the book, Things You See with Your Eyes Closed, a blind Wall Street analyst's stories of everyday miracles. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Shin for his keynote speech. Mr. Shin.
Thank you, William. I'm so honored to be here with you all, albeit virtually. My purpose this evening, I'm told, is to give job seekers encouragement and hope. I assure you that hope is very much alive, to be sure, much more alive and resilient than the coronavirus. I have limited control for avoiding the viral infection, but I know that I can choose to get infected with the strongest strain of hope. Today, I'd like to share with you how I got this most severe case of hope-itis. The phrase stumbling blocks has to be more poignant and relevant to blind people than most others. Even before my Pegil party, Pegil Janchi, you know, that party that people have in Korea for their baby who turned 100 days old. Before that party for me, doctors diagnosed the still incurable disease of glaucoma in both of my eyes. Instead of family, friends, and neighbors, there were nurses at my Pegil party as I was hospitalized for my first eye surgery. My mother stopped counting the number of surgeries I had at number 22. It took 8 long years and enough money to buy a house a year for the doctors to conclude that my eyesight could not be saved after all. And so I lost all visual acuity, even the light perception, at the age of 9. This was no stumbling block. It was more like a huge boulder, which could have been an insurmountable barrier for my life. But that was a mere prologue for my life. The main story was just beginning. Being defeated once in the battle of saving their son's eyesight, my parents, especially my mother, soon entered another battlefield, that of educating and training me so that I would be prepared to face the world as a functioning adult. She enrolled me in a school for the blind in Seoul, and after asking around, decided that the most respectable career I could have was that of a music teacher at a school for the blind. She ignored the obvious fact that I was tone deaf and had no musical talent whatsoever. But you know those Korean mothers. She insisted that I take piano lessons, learn Braille music, fully memorize every piece I played, and practice, practice, practice. Tiger moms existed even back then in the 1970s Korea. Something about 1% talent and 99% practice. I still think that she was wrong about my potential as a music teacher. But wouldn't you know it, that determination of hers to give me every chance for a full, fulfilling life eventually brought me an opportunity of a lifetime, something neither she nor I could have imagined. In the summer of 1980, I went to summer camp sponsored by the United World Mission in Korea. Once, to impress the new friends I had made at camp, I began to play the piano. I still remember it. It was Schubert Impromptu number 90-2, a fast-paced piece that sounds great, even if you make lots of mistakes along the way. While I was playing the piano, a gentleman who spoke English came over and asked for my name and where I went to school. One of the boys there translated for me and told me that the gentleman was an important missionary. He said, now that the missionary knew who I was, something good may happen to me. It was an understatement of the century. As the fall school term began, I learned that the Reverend Barry Flitcroft, the director of the United World Mission, was organizing a quartet of blind students to take to the United States for a fundraising tour. He insisted that I go along as the accompanist. The arguments against this idea, that I was too young and that there were many other much more talented piano players at the school, did not persuade him. So in January of 1981, I went on my first trip to the United States with the quartet. During that tour, we visited the Overbrook School for the Blind in Philadelphia. When the director of that school heard me play the piano, again, the same impromptu, he decided that I should be given a chance to come to his school. So this way, through the piano lessons I was forced to take, the practices which were forced on me, I got a chance to come to the United States as an international student, which I did when I was 15 years old. From then on, one amazing thing followed another. I got to attend a regular public high school. I dared to apply to some top universities and got to study at Harvard College and MIT. In a curious chain of events, I wound up in a finance career working on Wall Street. And the most amazing of all, I even got married, and my wife Grace and I have two children, a 19-year-old daughter, Yejin, and a 15-year-old son, David Patrick. In short, I got to live a life beyond my wildest dreams. Well then, how has the walk been? It has been over 38 years since I came to America. I told you the high points so far, the education, the career, and the family. But how has the walk, specifically the career walk, been? Well, I had many dreams. Arriving in Cambridge, Massachusetts as a college freshman, I was full of confidence. I vowed to take the advanced courses quickly, graduate in 3 years, and someday win the Nobel Prize. In what? Doesn't matter, in something. I proudly told a fellow freshman that I had taken calculus in 12th grade. He said, "Oh, calculus. I studied that when I was 11. He didn't mean 11th grade, he meant age 11. I knew that I was in trouble. From the little league to the major league, perhaps, a frog finally out of the deep well. So I decided to dial back on my dream. Like many other Korean students, I decided to go for pre-med. You see, I had heard about a totally blind person who had attended Temple University Medical School and become a successful psychiatrist. How cool would it be to become a doctor? Despite my blindness, I dreamed of wearing a white coat and being highly respected for my accomplishments. Well, that went out the window too. When I was a junior in college, I learned about the technical guidelines which the American Medical Association had adopted. Among other things, the guidelines required that a doctor must be able to examine a patient without assistance. In short, it was saying that a blind person who cannot see a patient's physical condition, such as his pallor, cannot become a doctor. I was very discouraged. Pre-med at Harvard was no cakewalk. I had taken all those competitive science classes. For a while, I became depressed and lost motivation and direction. After a while, though, I had to acknowledge to myself that a medical career was an aspiration that had in part come from my ambitious nature to show the world what I could do, even though I was blind. It was a lot more about my ego than a desire to help, heal, or cure. By this time, I was a college senior, and the future was appearing a lot faster than I liked. So I resolved to be more realistic and quit insisting on dreams or aspirations that had long odds of success. So I decided, what else? To go to grad school. I figured that I could have an academic career instead. After all, there were more blind professors than blind doctors or Nobel Prize winners. I had taken an undergrad course called Psychology Applied to Business. I liked that course. What's more, I liked the professor who taught it because he took a particular interest in my undergrad career. So I went to MIT Sloan School for a PhD in organization studies. Alas, academic career was not in the cards for me either, apparently. In the early 1990s, the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was giving employers, especially large employers, anxiety. One of the ADA mandates was that an employer could not discriminate based on disability in hiring, promoting, compensating, etc. The problem was that without regulations or case laws, nobody knew what the law really required them to do. I decided to focus my research on this. The question I wanted to answer was how a profession becomes more accessible to disabled people. As a case study, I selected an investment job and what else? Blindness. The goal was to find some blind investment professionals and find out from them how they got their jobs and how they were doing their jobs successfully. To my surprise, I could not find blind investment professionals, especially those who began from the bottom and worked their way up to, say, an analyst role on Wall Street. Well, one of the professors suggested that I research the question by doing. He had worked as a policeman for a number of years in LA because he wanted to study police culture. This is known as participative observation study. So I decided to do the same and applied for an investment job at Wall Street firms. I got an internship at JP Morgan in 1994. It was supposed to be for one summer. Then it became for 1 year. Finally, I decided to drop out of the PhD program, much to my parents' grief, as you can imagine. I have been working as an analyst ever since for 26 years and counting. Looking back, the walk has been full of stumbling blocks. When I ran into one, I tried not to fall, first of all. Instead, I took bigger steps to get over it or go around it. If I fell, like that time I learned that I could not become a doctor, I changed my destination altogether instead of trying to climb over the huge rock that showed up in my way. All throughout this journey, I kept telling myself that there has to be a way, another way to get to where I need to go. That is what I call hope. And this hope has never disappointed me yet. I encourage you all to choose to be infected by hope, and may you never recover. Well, thank you for listening. I look forward to our conversation and talk about some questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shin, for sharing your stories. As a disability rights lawyer myself, I was inspired to go to law school, back in college, when I took a course that was taught by a disability rights lawyer who was blind himself, and who later became a Supreme Court justice in Michigan. So, a lot of, things you have said, resonate with me, and I deal with ADA in my everyday practice. And, as we, defend, as we defend a lot of, represent a lot of, people with disabilities at my firm as well. So thank you very much for sharing your stories. I do have several follow-up questions for you today. So, you talked about, having a career path and, expect that it's, general smooth progression. And, even though we may assume speed bumps here and there, we hope for things to go smoothly most of the time. If you could tell us about a time when things did not go smoothly and, when you in fact ran into, huge speed bumps, I'd appreciate your answers.
Yeah, well, the biggest speed bump I can remember is getting fired. Excuse me. So I I began my career in 1994, as I said, at JP Morgan. And actually, I got married in 1996. And in 1998, in February, I found out that Morgan was about to implement a rather big layoff, and my name was on the list. It was a big bummer. I mean, here I am, married not even 2 years. We're hoping for a large family, children, all that. And all of a sudden, boom, no job. Well, what Morgan did for me actually is that they said, okay, you can stay until end of June. But you will not be doing your regular work. You will be looking for a job. So that was a really tough turn. I really didn't know what to do. What made things worse, of course, is that I was not even a US citizen at the time, did not even have a green card. So if I could not find an employer who would take over my green card application case, I would have to leave the country with my wife. So that was a big, big speed bump. Um, but my wife basically said, "Gee, those folks at Morgan made a mistake. I cannot believe they let you go. Such a talented person." She still thinks I'm very talented. Anyway, she encouraged me, and I decided that I did it once, sending a lot of resumes to Wall Street firms to get a job. I can do it again. So I decided it was a numbers game. Anything that came close to what I was looking for, what my qualification might be, any close match, I basically sent them resumes, cover letters. Back then in 1998, it was actual pieces of paper you had to send by snail mail. So I figured if I send 100 resumes, I might hear from 10 employers. That might result in maybe 5 phone interviews. That might lead to, say, 2 face-to-face interviews and so on and so forth. Well, what I did not realize is that, like I said, blind investment professionals were very rare back then. So the progression of job interviews would go smoothly until we were to meet face to face. And so I would warn them that I would be showing up with my seeing eye dog. And they would say, oop. It was amazing. When I talked about my seeing eye dog, 2 hours later, they would call and say, "Excuse me, we actually filled that position. You don't need to come in." So I used to joke, "Gee, if you have problems filling positions, just offer me a face-to-face and that will be solved." But I kept telling myself I had to be lucky only once, just one out of all those folks I was talking to. I had to be lucky once. And interestingly enough, I got lucky twice. I got offers almost simultaneous from 2 different firms. And I chose to go to Brown Brothers Harriman, BBH, in 1998. And so my first day at BBH was June 29th, 1998. I got off payroll at JP Morgan on June 30. And wouldn't you know it, the lawyer who was handling immigration cases for Morgan was the same at BBH. So I didn't even have to find a new lawyer. It was such an amazing thing. And it was an incredible 3 months of effort for that. So that was the biggest speed bump I can remember, the biggest threat in my career, in my personal life. But it really was an amazing experience of trust from my wife and confidence in myself and saying I had to be lucky only once. And that's what really helped me on this everlasting journey of seeking for hope and finding it.
Thank you, Mr. Shin. I'm sure JP Morgan is still regretting their decision to fire you at the time, and looking back. So I do have other questions. So looking back in your 26-year career on Wall Street, what was the most challenging experience you would say, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, career-wise, I think when you get hired into a firm like Brown Brothers, you're basically the big star in the beginning. They bring you on, um, looking at your qualifications, your educational pedigree, your experiences, and your personality, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, you are a regular employee. And 1998 was a time when some of us remember it was the year of internet bubble. And I just wasn't in no way prepared um, for the huge market downturn that was coming. Actually, from 1990, when I joined BBH, I was doing equities. So it was such an exciting time, high tech equity names. It was just, I was right there in the middle of the internet bubble. And I was, like I said, very surprised by the market downturn. So was a lot of people. We always talked about how the market just couldn't be sustained. But 2000, 2001, that time frame, things just went the wrong way. And it was like the biggest career slump ever, you know? For the longest time, they were looking to me for decisions, for ideas, and following my ideas, buying stocks, I had delusions sometimes that my decision would move market, all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, come 2001, you know, I had nothing to do in terms of hot ideas. People weren't paying attention to me anymore. What's more, on Wall Street, you know that our compensation has two components. You have salary, you have bonus. And bonus can be rather sizable portion of your compensation. And there was 1 year around that time that I got no bonus whatsoever. Money is one thing, but when a Wall Street firm doesn't give you a bonus, it says something. What they're saying is, we don't need you here. The idea of being valued very little, feeling that you're unwanted, it's very difficult to take day after day when you go into your office. So it was another time of self-reflection and deciding what I needed to do, where I want to go. I love the firm. I mean, I still do. I've been there for 22 years. I must love the place. I love the people. So I decided, instead of jumping ship again, I decided to persevere. That was a place I felt that year or two or three of this kind of thing, I'll get back on my feet professionally. And I just took it one day at a time, getting through each day, doing what needs to be done every day. Just say, this is what I need to get done today. And, we'll just look for the next year. There's got to be brighter days ahead. And, I don't exactly know when things began to brighten, but they did eventually. And, I'm still there. I still enjoy the work. I still enjoy the people I work with. And, Brown Brothers is an interesting place. It's still a privately held with very few number of partners owning the firm and running it. And, we basically talk to partners all the time on a first name basis. It's a wonderful place. And I'm glad that I endured those 2-3 years of major career slumps shortly after I was hired there.
Thank you. I'm sure BBH is very glad to have you there for the past 22 years. And, you're working diligently for the firm and, and as well. Since most, many of our people, watching this webinar are, job seekers, who are having a very, I'm sure very difficult time, especially in the pandemic. I have a lot of friends, who had to return to Korea, because of visa issues and because, they were laid off, during this very difficult time. And, I'm sure, with your, background and your time, on Wall Street, I'm sure you have some valuable insights that you can, share with, job seekers out there. So, if you had like 3 minutes, with someone just starting in their career, what advice or strategy would you give them?
Very good question. 3 minutes is good because one time I was asked this similar question, what 5 things can you think of? So I probably can't go that far. But the first thing that comes to mind is be flexible. Remember I told you that I got an internship in 1994 at JP Morgan? Well, I didn't mention that that was not for corporate finance role. That was actually for an HR role. Remember I told you that I was studying organization studies, like org behavior kind of discipline. The fact of the matter is that I made solid connections at JP Morgan in terms of interviews and so on, but there really wasn't any corporate finance group that was willing to take on a blind person. Morgan had never hired a blind person before in their, what was that? Almost like 200-year history, and 150-year history maybe. And they said, well, that's got to be something he can do here. There's got to be something he can do here. So I said, well, there's a lot of things I can do. It doesn't have to be balance sheets and income statements and so on. And they said, well, do you know SQL? And I said, yeah, I know SQL. SQL, by the way, is a database language that we use in business. I took a course, like 3 weeks of which was learning SQL. And I said, well, I can do SQL. They said, well, HR has a need of an SQL programmer who can help us with our information management system. I said, I can do that. The point I'm making here is that if you want to do something and that there's a goal, you want to be a data scientist, or you want to do corporate finance, you want to do graphics design, or whatever it might be. Sometimes taking a little side trip, if you value the firm that you want to go to, you can be willing to spend some time doing something else and transition into the role that you want to be. And so I actually did SQL programming for 3 months. And while I was doing that, I actually met people in corporate finance groups, global markets, sales and trading, and all that. It was not a sort of a threatening kind of a situation, give me a job kind of a thing. It was as a colleague to a colleague, good to meet you, what do you do? I want to learn. And that just went for the whole summer. And by the end of the summer, I had an offer from one of the corporate finance groups. So being flexible, I think, especially in the beginning of your career, can be the thing that makes the difference for achieving your long-term goal. That's the first thing. Second thing is that integrity really is your best capital. You know, one of the things that I value highly is people who can admit their error. I still remember when I was doing corporate credit for Morgan, this was maybe 1997, that time frame. I had, you know, when you're, today you probably don't have to do this, but back then you had to actually copy all the financial data, statements data from your annual reports and prospectuses to your spreadsheet. So you have to actually by hand type the thing. So there was one time I actually made a mistake. Those of you who know corporate finance and balance sheet, what that looks like, I copied other liabilities into debt row. And as you can imagine, that actually screws things up. And I remember my boss saying, you know, these leverage numbers look funny. And I looked back and said, yeah, they do look funny. And I found out later that the error that I had made. And I said, you know what? I screwed up. I copied down the wrong row. And, you know, she was not happy. And I think that might have contributed to the fact that I got on that layoff list. So owning up to your mistakes might present challenges in your career path, but in the long run, it did me a world of good because people know when I say something that's based on, you know, an opinion that is based on the real data, opinions that really come from solid reasoning, because I still do that. I still say when I was wrong, I tell them I was wrong about something. And you know, as your career progresses, it's not just a silly confusion on a row of data. It becomes actually a judgment call too. You know, there are times when I just wasn't thinking a question fully through and basically helped the firm lose money. But what's wonderful about investment business is that if you're right 6 out of 10 times, you know, that's great. 7 out of 10 times, you're basically a star. So we can afford to admit that when you were wrong, because when you do that, they don't question your judgment as often. So integrity is terribly important. The last thing I would say is that remember that the job is not all. Really, I mean, those of you who are starting in your career right now, you might think that I can say this because, you know, I've had 26 years of career under my belt. I have a family, I'm relatively stable, I can say that. But this is something I've actually believed from get-go. For me, family was more important. You know that big saying about nobody regrets having spent too much time in the office? I say, I want, when I'm dying, I want to say, gee, I should have spent a lot more time at the office, because it's the reverse, right? Because by saying that, I can assure myself that I was actually focused on more important things. So for me, more important, meaningful things in my life have been, as I say, my family. Also, the writing career I launched 5 years ago. I have a published book under my belt. It's an essay collection published in Korea. And I still write monthly columns for 매일경제, which is the Economy Daily. It's like the business newspaper, similar to the Wall Street Journal here. I write opinion column that has nothing to do with finance, has everything to do with how best to live our lives meaningfully. And finally, I am a founding member of this enterprise called Yana Ministry. We help abandoned children in Korea. You probably don't know this, but 1 out of 80 babies born in Korea is abandoned today. And these kids are not orphans, they're just abandoned. So they grow up in children's homes, what used to be called orphanages, and we help them. As a matter of fact, my daughter, Yejin, we brought her over from one of those orphanages and we raised her here. And Yana, one of the things that we do at Yana is that. And giving kids who had such a rotten lottery ticket of life to begin with, we want to reverse that. I always say that, it's true that life is unfair, but I think what we really should look to do is to lessen the unfairness of life if we can. William, you are a lawyer. You defend clients who may be disabled, who might be facing challenges because of that. See, that's a meaningful job, meaningful work. So you actually can draw meaning from your work. Wall Street job has a lot of good things attached to that. But one thing that I don't think I can really claim with a straight face is that it's a meaningful work. So remember, the job is not all. There are a lot of other things that can make your life full and meaningful, and look for that, because that's what's going to sustain you a lot better in the long run than a career.
Thank you, Mr. Shin. Thank you for the great work that you do, in your life. I was really looking forward to meet you today because, I've seen you on YouTube, giving, different speeches in Korea, and, you're the star, right? So,
I don't know about that.
I was really looking forward to meet you today and hear your stories. And, I really want to thank you for your work that you do as part of your ministry, and, being an inspiring role model for, many of people out there. So I, really want to thank you again for joining us today and really sharing your stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, William. Thank you for listening. Look forward to meeting you someday.
Same here. Thank you. Now we're gonna turn over. So this is gonna, be the end of session 1. For session 2, we're gonna have 2 panelists, Esther An and Yejin Kim, join us and sharing some of their stories and some practical tips that they have for employment. So bear with us, we'll be back shortly. Hello, welcome to the session 2 of our webinar today, joined by Esther An, Yejin Kim. Hello, Yejin, Esther, how are you?
Good. Hi. How are you?
So Esther An is the head of user experience for YouTube TV. She focuses on building the subscription products experiences for both YouTube Music and YouTube TV. Esther is joining us from California, I believe.
Yes, thanks, William. Glad to be here.
Yes, nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us. Yejin Kim is a Senior Vice President of Global Creative IT Cosmetics, part of L'Oreal's Luxe division, where she drives creative strategy and leads the development and creation of the brand. Yejin, thank you so much for joining. us
Thank you
today.
for having me.
Yes, just a brief roadmap. Each panelist today will give a brief introduction about what they do, and we'll turn our gears to ask them questions, and employment tips that they might have, and the personal journey that they had so far. So, Esther, I guess we'll start with you with your brief presentation whenever you're ready.
Great. Thanks a lot, William. I'm going to just make sure everyone can see my screen here. Okay, so I'm Esther Ahn. Happy to be part of this panel with Yejin today. I feel honored to be able to speak and hopefully can provide some insights. My role right now is I'm the head of user experience at YouTube TV. So YouTube TV is a little bit different from regular YouTube, although we're part of the same company I work on. It's a subscription TV, live TV service that we offer for users, and you can see here on the screen some of the experiences there. I manage a team of designers, researchers, and content strategists, and we are focused on product areas including YouTube TV, as well as building out the sports vertical on YouTube. I am based out of the Bay Area over here, close to San Francisco. Prior to working on YouTube TV, I worked on YouTube Music. So I've been at the company for a little over 4.5 years, and I've been really focusing on creating the paid experiences, premium subscription experiences on YouTube. And so music was a project that I worked on for many years, where we redesigned and launched a new music experience. And recently, Google Play Music is now sunsetting, and so this is one music service for Google that is offered. For those on this live stream that are not as familiar with what UX or user experience is, it's a process used to create products, and we're really thinking about the experience of our end users and how to make the experience meaningful and relevant. So this involves the entire process, including strategy, branding, design, usability, and function. Now, my career path was by no means a linear journey, and we can talk a little bit more about that in some of the specific questions. I studied and worked in various topics. It wasn't a straight shot to where I am today, but those experiences really shaped who I am and have been really valuable to what I do in my career. Initially I started out studying architecture, and that was a decision after trying out many different subjects, but architecture was what I invested in and spent some time detailing out blueprints. If you look really closely at this image, a lot of my time was actually detailing some bathrooms as an intern, so really trying to find my way. Ultimately, I decided not to pursue a career in architecture, and I went through many different types of jobs. I had gotten laid off, in the early 2000s due to the dot-com boom. But it was really the bubble bust at that time. Moved to New York City and then joined a law firm and started working as a public relations assistant. But my heart was always in design and creativity. So I kept looking and I tried for different jobs. And ultimately, I found an opening at a small design consultancy in New York City. And I took a job as a project manager, which I didn't have a ton of experience on. But it was a really life-changing experience where it opened the doors into designing consumer products. Here you can see it's a brand called the OXO, but it was rethinking how simple products like a can opener could be redesigned, taking into consideration, the human and user needs and how to make it easy and simple. And then ultimately started joining other design companies and working for other industries, including healthcare, and worked on several different programs for them. And then ultimately, I'm where I am today with over 15 years of experience, maybe 20, I don't know, I've lost count. But I think what I've been really focused on this year, it's been a tough year for many people, I'm sure on this call, is just overall balance. As a manager, I oversee teams, but it's also about balancing everything, doing what's best for the product as well as for individual career growth. It also means developing work-life balance, as I'm a mom with 2 kids. So this has been a real focus of mine for this past year. And that's the end of my slides. So I will hand off to Yejin.
Thank you, Esther. And, thank you for having me in this valuable time. I think, let me just, explain like who I am, I guess, introduce myself. So I'm the head of global creative at It Cosmetics. And it became a part of L'Oreal. As you know, it's a big French beauty company. I oversee packaging and digital, social and branding, video and visual merchandising, retail design, and creative operation and production. Anything you can think of that you see in the store from a one brand. So I was, born in Seoul, and I left when I was 15 to go to study in London and Paris. And I went to college in LA and moved to New York 2000. And to find my first job in actually advertising, somehow I ended up in beauty, and I have been in-house creative director for last 20 years. And that's who I am. I guess we can talk about more of, how we get the first job and things like that. Do you actually, it also inspired, what SK was talking about on his, like, how he got the first job. And I actually have a very similar experience, I guess. I finished my school at 2000 in LA, and I was like, okay, now it's time to go to New York. And did I have any idea of, like how tough it will be? And also, I was here as a student. So without having any visa or any support, I really did not have any idea. Not only that, I was so focused on like finishing up my school as early as possible so I can get a job. Didn't do any internship. Wow, so had zero work experience, landed in New York, and my dream job was be, in like a madman in advertising and become one of like those, like big boss in ad agency. And came over, and I realized without any job experience, not even an intern, and knowing nobody, that I had no place to even get an interview. So I actually got an alumni book from my college, and I literally found every single person who is in New York working in branding, advertising, any design firm. I emailed them, called them in person, and just asking for an advice, just 30 minutes to give it to me. And you will be surprised. A lot of people, when you're not asking for a job, they are actually very open to it. And that's actually how I got to know all the streets of New York, like with the, metro buses and, with my huge like portfolio and like carrying around. So, I've been doing that for 6 months. And my actually parents who are in Korea, especially my dad, is like, you still don't have a job after 6 months of interviewing. That means you're not good enough. I think you should come back home. And that was like probably like the last thing I wanted to hear. So I started, wherever I could go, somehow I found a job at Shiseido, and which is a Japanese cosmetic company. And they were looking for a freelancer, some kind of help. And I said, I really need a visa. Could you support me? Because, with a work permit, in 6 months, I'll be out of the country. And they're like, I'm so sorry. We just need the help, but we cannot really support you on any of those situations. So you can still look for a job and go for an interview, while you're working here. So I spent like 3 months of working really, really hard and going all these other interviews. So I actually ended up getting a job at Jail Advertising, which is in Korea. So I just got a job. Literally on that same week, I got an offer from Shiseido that they wanted to hire me as a full-time. And I was like, okay, this is like the biggest decision I have to make. You know, all my dream was like living in New York and become one of those like, you know, Sex and the City kind of a career woman. And then, you know, like, so, but I know jail ad agency in Korea is like the one of the biggest. And, you know, how much am I going to regret this in, you know, after 5 years? So, but after all this thinking, I was like, okay, I'm going to take a chance. So I will live here and see, you know, maybe after 3 years, you know, I will just go back home, and then maybe I will, you know, I'll find a man and I'll get married and have a normal life. I don't know what normal means anymore, but that was pretty normal for a Korean woman who, you know, grew up in Korea until 15. So that's how I started my career. Esther, or?
Thank you, Yejin. Sorry, I mispronounced, you know, your company as IT.
Oh, it's okay.
Ed Cosmetics. Sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, thank you very much, you know, for you know, giving a brief introduction of how you came to work at where you are. Yejin, I do want to follow up, you know, as to how you ended up at the current company, you know, from your initial career as Shiseido. If you could, you know, briefly touch upon that, that'd be great.
Sure. So if I want to add anything, actually, you know, like I still wonder, you know, why they gave me a job. But only thing I did or different was I worked really, really hard. If they ask for one layout, I think we all do, you know, like when you really want something, I think I gave them like 20, 30 options of a different layouts. And it's just so much passion for the work and, you know, to do what I wanted to do. So I think that's how I got a job, and I was there 4.5 years, and it was amazing experience because I had a boss from Japan, and they were so detail oriented, and I just learned so much from my boss who came from Japan, and you know, who was like kind of telling me like, Yejin, I don't understand, when you're junior, why are you going home at 5? When I was your age in Japan, I worked until like midnight, and that was not good enough. I was like, I don't know, I want to have a life. But what I'm trying to say is I had a very tough boss and learned a lot from her, and, you know, aesthetics, but also, you know, how to like work hard and, you know, get what you want. After 4.5 years, you know, not trying to be funny, but I asked for a raise, and my boss said, you know, like, I love you, but you should look for another job. So if you really want to, you know, big jump, you should probably do that. And I was like, you just don't value me. But anyway, so I found a job at La Prairie, which was very high-end luxury cosmetic company. And, you know, they kind of like, okay, you will have a small team of 3, and, you know, you're kind of in charge on art direction and stuff like that. And I also had to work with a very, very senior people who, you know, who kind of create a company, and, you know, very much about big idea driven, but also very old style. And I'm talking about average age of like 75-year-old. Yeah, so it was also very old school. Learned a lot. I was there 9 years, and it was owned by this huge company called Beiersdorf, a German company. And it was like every 3 years, it was a kind of a new company, different company. You know, their goal was different and something they're looking for. So I was able to stay there 9 years. And then as a creative person, you really want to have a variety of stuff in your book. When I say book, it's on your portfolio. And I really wanted to get away from department store and, you know, $500 cream. It's just like, it's, you know, I want something really different. So I went to a Bliss. It's a spa, originally a spa company, and they have a beauty product. And that's where it is more like a mass and prestige. So I became a creative director, and, you know, had a team of like 10 people. And that's where I kind of became like in charge of something and leading the team, and really learned a lot in those 3 years of this different, I guess, consumers, a Sephora and Ulta and all those different markets, because I used to be all in like department store places. So then, of course, I found this company called It Cosmetics. And I'm sure a lot of people may not know now even, but they were huge in QVC, which is, TV shopping company. And I kind of heard about it in the industry, but I really did not know. And I went there and I fell in love with my boss and my partners who I'll be working with. And I could really see what I can do in this company to, to make this company next level. And, not that I knew it was going to sold to, within a year and a half to L'Oreal, $1.2 billion in cash. And that was probably my biggest achievement on my career, because within that 1.5 years, had to come up and lead the team of 8 became 40 people. And from branding, ideas, the how we're going into all these different retailers, and just coming up with all the branding stuff that we need, coming up with new packaging and ideas and visual code. So it was an amazing experience. And I've been at L'Oreal also almost 4 years now. And last 4 years, I've been working how to make the brand globally. So I've been traveling a lot, and how we express our brand right way in Europe and Southeast Asia, and now we're looking China, and that has been my career.
Thank you, Jen. Just hearing from you, you've really made your dream of like becoming a star of Sex and the City, living in New York, traveling across the globe, working in the fashion industry, beauty industry. I just want to turn over to Esther. You've also shared that you've had experience in very many different fields. You studied architecture in the beginning, and now you're at YouTube. So I imagine like having those experience that were not not matched as what you do. I'm sure you've had a lot of obstacles along the way. So if you could share some of your stories of as to some of the obstacles that you encountered and how you handle those in your career.
Sure. By the way, Yejin, I love It Cosmetics. I think it's such a cool brand, and it's something I became familiar with. So when I heard you were on, I thought that was so cool, but really amazing to hear that story.
Wow.
Yeah, I love it. I was like, oh, that's great.
Do they have men's products too?
Oh, there's no man and woman anymore. We're 21st century.
Sorry for my ignorance there.
Yeah, so in terms of obstacles, gosh, there's so many, I think us kind of go through a lot of challenges and then we sort of forget. It's a really good question. I think probably one of the big ones I went through was when I worked in design agencies, more smaller agency style. You work very much with teams, you work with a client, you get to travel, short engagements, or maybe at most 1 year, and then you move on to another project. And then I had transitioned to YouTube, which is a big corporation, right? So it's moving in-house now into a in-house design team. It's a large company owned by Google. And so I would say that transition was not easy at first. I think most of the people they're in the top % or 1 percentile what they do. And so naturally there's something that I had heard about when I was in my initial training, but it's called the Imposter Syndrome. But that's what I felt like, right? Which is like, I felt, oh, I felt like an imposter with these very smart and talented people. And you know, it was just trying to get up to speed and understand the technology, understand the platform. Designing in an agency is very much different than designing in-house, because a lot of times when you're in an agency, you're helping to imagine for the company or a strategy, and so you can look very future forward. And at YouTube, although we are looking future forward, we're also launching products every day. So features are getting launched and approved, and they're available to billions of users, essentially, right? Millions to billions of users. So we're scaling the product internationally to 100 plus countries. So that mindset was very different, and needed to understand, how do I design features that are technically robust, that it's part of a system that works, a fear of like not messing anything up, making sure that it's delivering value and not causing confusion. So that was a really hard initial period. I think the way I navigated it was to just immerse myself as much as possible in learning the skills through other people, as well as through training. I signed up for a lot of different training inside the company, but also just on my own. I went to a lot of workshops to figure out how to just get better at strategic thinking, and really make sure I was at the top. Ultimately, it was really building the trust of those people on my team as well as those above me. I think it's this notion of managing up and managing down. It's really important to be doing both, because you need to make sure you're being really fair and transparent and helping people underneath you be the best that they can be. That's, I think, my biggest mission. But at the same time, I have to make sure I am gaining visibility and influence over many of our top executives and leadership within the company. And so it's constantly finding that balance. But again, like, I think a lot of people, when you're first starting out, either a new job or entering a new company type of environment, you may feel that feeling of not being good enough or maybe not smart enough. And I would say that that is a very common feeling across so many people, and doesn't matter what company you're at. And it's almost like the biggest obstacle you have is overcoming yourself, and just believing in yourself and really putting in the effort to feel confident in your communication skills, in your craft, and what your specific area of focus is.
Thank you, Esther. I mean, thank you for the encouraging word, because that's exactly how I feel every day at work. Like, am I competent enough? Like, am I doing well enough? And as I guess, as a Korean, I guess we're always has been exposed to that competition. That you have to do well. So that is very encouraging. Thank you. And I guess just to touch upon that, and to elaborate. I guess you would have something that you want to say to I guess a lot of people in our audience today who are about to embark on their career or in college. If you have things that that you want to share, things you wish you had known when you started your career, or things you could have changed. If you could share some of those, I guess maybe you can go to Yejin first.
Thank you. I mean, I totally actually agree with Esther and what William is saying. I'm going through the same thing, and you think it will end, and can I ever managing just down? Like, is that time ever gonna come? But but it's like dealing with the people. Like you leave the job because of people, actually, not because of the work, right? And that has been also, like, I completely agree with you, and that's like everyday learning, still learning what that is, and how to be better. But yeah, I totally agree with you. So then what I like, simple answer, what I really wish I would have known is that if I had a mentor, I also was afraid. I didn't even know like how to ask for help, to be honest. And again, that kind of goes with like, this Korean mentality of, you kind of have to figure it out yourself, and, you will, and, if not, you're not strong enough and you're not good enough. So I made a lot of mistakes, when if you look at my resume, I know it looks pretty perfect, but so many mistakes on those times. And when I changed my career and how I changed my career and, my next level, how I, get my, raise and, what is the next step? I really wish I had a mentor and I didn't know how to ask for it. And, probably, when I got a job at It Cosmetics, that was, after like 15 years of my career, I realized I need a mentor. So I reached out to people who I used to work with and really asked them, they know me also, they work with me, so they know who I am. And I could really ask for straight questions and everyday, like struggles. And you would be very surprised, like how everybody opened their arms and, tried to give you as much, help they could. So yeah, that is something I could share with people. And, that's why also when I had this chance, I love to mentor anybody who asks, my advice or what I've been through, so that's what I'm also trying to do.
Yeah, 100% on that as well. I think as Koreans, we always feel like we can figure it out on our own. I notice that a lot with other Koreans that I work with. It's, a sense of pride and also a sense of just being hardworking. But the idea of being proactive to find an advocate, a sponsor, a mentor, it's basically someone that will give you guidance, is so critical. And I wish I had done that earlier. Another area where I think I could have, if I gone back in time, is that I think we tend to look at so many different areas and then want to be perfect at everything. The notion of, I call it like a T-shaped model, but if you envision the letter T, you're really kind of going into a depth, some skill or area of expertise. I think it's important to develop that and invest time in building whatever that is, whether that's design, whether that's engineering, whether that's business. And then with that, then you start to look at across those, because you have one very specific skill set, but then you want to be able to understand how to think with all the other team members you'll be working with. So even as a designer, you want to understand the business aspects. You want to understand the technical aspects. You don't have to know everything about it, but being able to be well-rounded across will help you get a seat at the table, will help your ideas stronger, and they'll be more rationale. And so although I think this notion of like I can do everything and be everything, and maybe the future will be more roles emerging like that. My personal experience is that being able to have something that I could really lean into that is an expertise or specialty really helped me in my career push.
Thank you, Esther. Yes, switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about your specific industry because, I'm sure many people in our audience are, very much interested in, going into, either beauty industry or in the tech companies. So if you can, just to share, a little bit about how has the industries changed since you started and, where do you see the industry going in the future, especially in the pandemic era, there has been a lot of changes, with the hiring and recruiting as well. So if you could, share a little bit about that, that'd be really great. Yejin, do you wanna go ahead?
Sure. So beauty industry is very competitive. Did it change? Yes, it's getting bigger actually. It is something, if you really look at it, for the creative people, it is actually a great place to be because it is getting bigger. Simple answer, like, whether economy is good or bad, women and now also a man need a lipstick to make themselves, feel better, look better, and that will give them a confidence. So it's very competitive place. It is very fast paced too. And now, of course, the whole pandemic kind of pushed all of us to be more digital focused. Of course, that has been a focus for a lot of different industry, but it really within last 7 months, I think even just looking at us and our, a lot of different brands at L'Oreal, that we really accelerated, like how we can win in this online businesses and how do we connect offline, online together. So that has been actually amazing. And that's where it will, go more, of course, connecting like, what you experience in the store and then what you actually really, finding information and looking, like searching all these different competitors online will be, of course, the key. But industry-wise, I think beauty, a lot of consumers, they're also highly educated now. So it is not about just, beautiful women and smiling with, holding a product anymore. There has to be a strategy, and it goes same thing, like just because you're a designer, it doesn't mean you are making just something beautiful images. It has to be the way you will be successful is learning and knowing consumers and what is the strategy, why am I selling this product, what is the difference. And these are the questions you have to work with your cross-functional team and marketing people. But it is always train yourself, like thinking you are more than a designer, you are a strategic thinker is the key. And especially now everybody is more talking about the healthier way of living and what is good for us, not only us but for the earth, right? Sustainability and all that. So the industry is becoming not just a beauty itself, it is a more of your lifestyle and well-being. And so I think it's a good news. There are more and more spaces, a lot of different people are needed and, different experiences. So, people can implement that. I think that would be my answer.
Thank you very much, Yejin. Esther, do you have any insights on your industry?
Yeah, I mean, the technology industry in general is constantly shifting. I don't think we are not designing singular products anymore. Everything is connected, right? And so as we think about tech or even video platforms, it's really thinking about more of a system mindset. So what I mean by that is, think about before it was like, okay, I need an interface for my phone, or I need an interface for my TV, and that's what we're going to design. It's like buttons. But now it's like, you could imagine there's wearables. You have your watch, and you're using that to track your heartbeat while you exercise. And then maybe you're listening to music while you're exercising, and that's detecting your heart rate and then changing the tempo of the music you're listening to help you get a better workout. And then maybe at the end of the day, you're sitting down in front of your TV and you get, a dashboard of your activity throughout the day and maybe give you some recommendations of what to do to unwind. I think it's now about enabling people to achieve goals, ultimately, is what technology is trying to do. Some of it is sometimes good and some of it can be harmful. We have to be really careful about wellness and health and, the screen time, overabundance of that, and just overall like trust and safety of news. So these are all the different challenges that are happening with the industry that I'm in. It's complicated and really exciting at the same time because it's constantly shifting. But I think if you're interested in the field of either becoming an engineer or a developer or a UX designer or a researcher, there's so many opportunities right now across many different spaces, whether it's consumer products, healthcare, education, even with the election coming up, like how information is consumed and spread, like all of these areas are in such need of rethinking and making it more user-friendly. So I think that these are really interesting areas for people to explore.
Definitely. I mean, most of my friends are, or people that I talk to have been interested in going into tech industry or beauty industry. So, and, I do want to ask questions about, some of the key skills that are required in this industry. What college courses or experiences, do you recommend for those plan to, pursue their careers in the field? So if you could share some of the key qualities that are needed. Yejin, if you wanna go ahead
Yeah,
first.
sure. I think, of course, the designer. So I mean, I started, to be honest, when I was young, I was very like trained, like a trained painter, and like drawing all those, typical Korean education of, drawing like 5,000 sculpted the figure, and that's how they measure the creative, which was one of the reasons why I got out of Korea. That to be a designer, I think of course you start with the creativity that you have inside, and I think can it be trained? As somewhat, I think, but my honest answer is I think you have to born with it a little bit. Half of it you kind of, and also the interest and aesthetics and having this like amazing eye for details is, I think something you kind of have to have. The colleges, yes, that you go for and trained for these different design programs and how to use kind of learning the tools, how to express your design aesthetics and thinking. But I also saw so many people in the industry who are so good at with the basic learnings, that like tools that they have. When you can be appreciating the beautiful things, and but at the same time think big and think about strategy and like what I want to say, what I want to communicate it. Do I think we have to, like, people has to go to master degrees and getting another 2-3 years of student loan? I don't think so. I learned so much with about a year or 2 years of work experience, and also just keep digging for what I'm looking for and what I want to do. If you spend more time on that, I think that will actually lead you more to like where you want it to be and what you want to be. I actually am, yes, I went to all these art schools, but at the same time, I just wish I was an intern from my, freshman year, every single break that I could have in like ad agency or in any companies I could work for. So I, by the time when I actually finish my school or whatever, like you just learn so much from actual like living and like being in the field. So internship and wherever, however you could get any chance. And as like also as Kay said, just being flexible and be somewhere where you want to be, and then like there will be a way. I know it looks very like abstract, but it actually happens.
Yes, thank you, Yejin. Esther, if you have any insights that you want to share.
Yeah, I guess for people who are interested in breaking into tech, again, it's thinking about that role that you want to pursue. There's many different types of roles. Speaking specifically for UX, even it's growing like so fast, right? So within UX, there could be interaction design, visual design, prototyping, coding, research, writing, even. So I think it's like figuring out which of those is of interest. In my field, it would be learning how to develop a wireframe and mocks for UX, like whether it's like mocks to describe a user journey on a phone or a TV. Essentially, you're like building the blueprint for a service or a system. Design is highly graphic in nature, so having fundamentals in visual language proficiency and typography, color layout is important. It's not, like make it or break it. I think you can still be in UX. I think one of the most important things that's overlooked, and what I would say is absolutely critical to invest in, is your soft skills. What I mean by that is learning how to communicate effectively. How do you articulate yourself? How do you communicate your ideas so that other people can understand and come along? Collaboration is the second really utmost critical skill. I don't think that any job or role can be successful unless you understand how to collaborate with other teams and other types of people. The way that tech is right now, it's extremely cross-functional. By what I mean by that is design, engineering, marketing, business are all working together towards a common goal. So collaboration is going to be really of utmost importance. I think empathy, what I mean by that is really understanding other points of view. In UX, the most important skill is that you're understanding the needs of your end user. What are the challenges that they're facing? How can you think about that? Put yourself in their shoes. But empathy for other people you work with. Sometimes your colleagues you might not agree with, or bosses that you think are micromanaging, but always just being able to get other perspectives will help you, I think, succeed in your career.
Thank
My
you
God,
so much.
can I just add to that, because I 100% agree. And as a designer, I struggle a lot, and I think I'm still learning, because at the end of the day, you're selling your idea to all these other people, marketing people, sales people. And I just wish, I actually had a class, speech class, how to talk to other people and persuading other people. Maybe William can, give us some tips, because he's a lawyer. That's what you do every day. And that becomes critical more and more you go up higher and higher in your career. It is all about that, working with other people and persuading and like selling your ideas. So at a certain point to your career, like 10 years hit, whatever, my portfolio speak for what it is. But after that, I realized it is all about communication. So that is a great point.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's something that I always struggle myself, because I grew up in Korea, so English is not my first language. So having to convey your ideas in a second language, which is English for me, is a difficulty that I come across every day in my work. But I do echo that it is very important. It's for me, it's pretty much all of my work. Like how to persuade or communicate with others. Speaking of job applicants, and I assume a lot of our people are in our audience. Some of them are international students who are studying here. So I think this question is for you, Yejin, because I think you have some insight that you can share on how to approach or discuss a visa sponsorship with a company when you interview for a job, because that's not always an easy issue or point of discussion that you could have with your employers. So if you could share your stories, that'd be great.
Sure. It was probably one of the most difficult thing that I went through. Like, and if somebody asked me like, what is your like career, like your lifetime achievement, is probably getting a green card. And that's another reason I try to mentor, talk to all my people, like whoever asks for help, who is going through the same thing. Like when you work so hard and come abroad and without parents, and work so hard for it, and then you have this amazing portfolio and you go everywhere else, and then just because you don't have a sponsorship or visa or green card, that it just like get turned down, it is the horrible feeling, because it is beyond my control. And and that was my experience, and how I approached it is, I grew up in Korea. I have this, different perspective. And to be honest, right now, being Asian and having different perspective of what that is being international. When you compare a lot of people in America, even in New York, I actually find it amazing how they kind of living in this, small, like their own bubble. So you should approach it as you're actually having two different cultures, and how important those are in right now for all over the world. And, so it should be actually a plus. And, when I go for an interview, I was very upfront from from the first interview. I tell them, what I need and, what is the way. So, and that is why I am, it's becoming more and more difficult, right? And I think now it's more difficult than ever. So that's why I want people to find the chances, especially when you're a student, doing all these different internship through the school and getting credits is just finding the door, knowing people, once people think that you're good, there's always a way, and finding like a champion of you. So then you get, like, once you get the visa, and I had 9 years of H-1B, and I actually refused when La Prairie offered me sponsor me a green card, because I felt like I will be a slave of some company. And I was like, okay, I will go home. I just realized about to go back to Korea after 9 years of my H-1B. I'm like, okay, just because of, my visa, do I really have to go? That kind of feels like, again, a failure. So I started looking, and I had no idea about this like special EB1 like green card and O visa. And like, I had no idea what those are. Never, so I found out what those are. So it is also, if you're interested, I guess you have to study for what are the things out there, and someone like me ask, questions. And so I found out, okay, if you want to be, applying for O visa or EB1, green card, like you can actually, if you're a designer, you also work for some company, but you can also have your own company like LLC or Inc. And, I actually, without knowing it, I had it on my side because I did a lot of, freelance work, or actually wanted to do some, kind of like a stationary business of the design. And so I had it. So there are all those ways to support and, collecting all your work. And again, knowing all these people who could recommend you to go through those steps. So I actually learned it very hard way, because I wasn't looking to stay in, after 9 years of my, visa. And then I found hard way, but at the same time, there is always a way. Especially for designers, I think you actually have more ways of finding, those special like O visa type of things. And those criteria is, I really think, is not that hard to fill once you're in it. So yeah, those things.
Thank you so much, Yejin. So given the time, I think we can we actually passed the time, but I do want to ask two more questions. One for Esther, and just to close it up, Esther, if you could share briefly about any tips on networking that you want to share with our audience tonight.
Yeah, networking is so important, right? And sometimes it sounds really hard to do. It's like, do I have to like go to events and give out a business card? I don't think so. I think network can be really casual. LinkedIn, again, a great resource, but I think the feature where you can see who you're connected to, right? And then when you reach out, just drop a very simple note, right? Which is like explaining, what your interest is. reach out to someone, you could even, the more specific you are, I think sometimes that can lead to some feedback. Mentorship doesn't need to be someone directly in your field. It could be someone else that's just doing well in their career, and it could be one-off interactions. You don't have to be talking to them all the time, but I think the relationships part has been so critical in my career. Everyone that I have come across in my life that's either worked below me or above me has come across me again. The design industry and the tech industry starts to merge, and you start to see a lot of the same faces. Preserve your relationships. Always be good to people around you, no matter what. I think that's the most critical thing. And then, keep those connections for those people. They'll always be like, I think, top 5 throughout your career that you really respect and admire, and do your best to maintain a connection with them throughout the year. Check in and see how you can deliver something of value to them, rather than it being about what they can do for you. Think about how you can provide some value or insightfulness for them, and that relationship will be really useful in the end.
Thank you so much, Esther. How open are you guys about like people, like cold messaging you on LinkedIn? Is that something that you're okay with, or for both of you?
Yeah, I'm good. I think my LinkedIn is there. I'm spawned, but I will get to it. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions there.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, me, of course.
I think that's very great to hear, and I think some our audience might be reaching out to you, but hopefully for further questions, I'm sure that would be a great connection moving forward for everybody. So so just to close off, if you guys any last word of advice for people watching this webinar, Yejin, do you have any?
I mean, I know it sounds very boring, but just really believe in yourself and trust yourself. I know it is hard. Every day is another thing that you have to deal with, and it's a struggle. But I think if you really believe in what you love, what you do, I mean, first of all, you have to find what you love to do. And I think I'm very fortunate that I am still doing what I love to do, which is creating something from nothing. And when I'm in like photo shoot, and when some campaign came out, I was like, wow, okay, it reminds me, like, this is why I'm doing it, when there are 100 other things that I hate about. But so just think where you come from, what you want it to be, and if you're following that, just make sure that you're doing what you love, and trust yourself. And I think also think outside, everybody's saying it, but really try to be, think big, and what is outside the box. And it is just the basic, which is so hard to do actually for every day. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, Esther.
Yeah, I would build off that. Finding and true to the topic or area that interests you is always a really good rule of thumb. Keeping that passion. And then I know SK said this earlier in his talk, and it inspired me. But just being positive and hopeful. There will be many setbacks in your career. I know I've experienced not getting that dream job, and everything happens for a reason. It's really about how you respond and how you move forward, and ultimately all of that will pay off.
Thank you so much, Yejin, Esther, for spending time with us today and sharing your insights. I have a lot more questions that I want to ask you, of course, but given the time, I think we'll have to say goodbyes. So this program webinar is co-hosted by the Korea Society and KOTRA as part of the K-Move program. And just to give you a brief introduction about K-Move, K-Move is the South Korean government's national project that supports overseas employment of talented young Koreans. And as part of this project, KOTRA provides complimentary career consulting services, including resume editing, immigration lawyer consulting, and professional career coaching services. And moreover, KOTRA performs free job placement services for, both for companies that seek to recruit Korean young professionals, as well as for those who wish to advance their careers in the US. It seems like an amazing program to me. So please contact KOTRA for further information. And if you also like to rewatch this webinar or share with friends or family, you can see the video at koreasociety.org website. Again, thank you, KOTRA and Korea Society for hosting this event. And thank you very much, Esther Yejin, for your valuable insights. Thank you so much. And thank you for everybody watching this amazing program. Thank you very much. Have a good night.